This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, Papa Poto, and Blood Down.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our Halloween anthology series, What If the Pokemon World Had a Zombie Apocalypse? If you haven't seen the last part, it's on my channel, and covers the story of how even survival can be its own type of curse. Link in the iCard above.
Also, don't forget to do the usual YouTube stuff like subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with friends.
But enough with us boring you to death, let's get on with scaring you to death.
So sit back, relax if you can, and enjoy Chapter 6, Brotherhood.
Silent tastes bile in the back of his mouth, an all too familiar flavor in recent months, accompanied, as per usual, by the cold, almost menthol burn of air as he desperately sucks it into his searing lungs, hoping to nourish them just enough to keep running. Overhead, Pansage swings from tree branch to tree branch, firing bullet seeds back at the infected, who fortunately are too addled to avoid them, with the smaller Pokemon and even younger humans quickly being shredded by the seeds. However, perhaps it would have been wiser to look up, as with Silent's eyes on the ground ahead, as so he does not trip on any roots or rocks, while Pansage is looking back at the horde of infected. Neither sees the Joltik descend from the foliage until its feet are on Pansage's back, and its fangs are in its throat. Hearing his companion's pained screeches, the green-haired boy looks up at last, pure horror on his face. This can't be happening. Not Pansage, too. Not after Stunfisk and Crustle. Reaching down instinctively, Silent lobs a rock at the Joltik, so that a second later it explodes into a mass of blue-veined viscera, though the damage is done, and a woozy Pansage falls from its perch. He catches it and cradles it in his arms. Without his partner to slow the oncoming horde, Silent knows that this is the end. All the while, salty tears sting his eyes. He'd been so close. He had made it through Johto, through Kanto, all the way back to the Decoller Islands. So close to home, he could almost taste it. But now, it's over. He can't do this alone.
Suddenly, something large and silver bursts from the tree line, creating a barricade between Silent and the oncoming abominations. In blinking back tears, the Stratton gym leader sees what appears to be a Steelix, though it is nothing like any Steelix he has ever seen before. On its head rides a young man with shaggy brown hair and narrow eyes who calls out to him, demanding to know if he was bitten like his Pokemon. And though Silent claims that he wasn't, the man doesn't seem entirely convinced, tossing down what appears to be a medical item of some sort. On closer inspection, the green-haired youth recognizes it as a device for collecting blood samples, and figuring his savior wants proof of his lack of infection, he obliges, pricking his finger, then tossing it back. By now, the infected have reached Steelix and are trying to overcome it with little to no success, though presently, the stranger seems far more fixated on the blood tester than the ravenous revenants trying to climb up and bite him, his eyes glued entirely to the device until it beeps and gives out a reading. Evidently, this is satisfactory to the man, as reaching down he tells Silent to climb up, and seeing no reason to turn down aid, the gym leader accepts, cradling a panting Pansage in one arm and using the other to lock grips with his new friend. Once he is pulled on board, the man commands Steelix to move out, a clearly familiar order, as the Steel Serpent does so with little delay, setting off what Silent can only assume is a pre-planned route without any need for direction from its trainer. This gives the pair of survivors a chance to speak, with the stranger asking if Silent has any companions or if he's on his own. Sighing wistfully, the connoisseur admits that he's been on his own since this whole mess began, though before that he travelled with a pair of good friends who he hopes are okay, named Iris and Ash.
At this latter name, the shaggy man's ears seem to perk up, him questioning if this Ash is Ash Ketchum, to which Silent nods that it is, asking if he knows him too. Adopting a wistful smile, the man nods, claiming they traveled together for a long time before finally introducing himself as Brock. Perking up a little, Silent smiles that he remembers Ash talking about him. If he recalls correctly, Brock went off to study to be a Pokemon doctor, didn't he? Though, before that, he was a gym leader and an impressive cook. As a matter of fact, he and his two brothers, Chili and Cress, used to lead the Striton Gym, which also doubled as a restaurant, so maybe they can swap recipes. At one, Brock's wistfulness takes a note of bitter pain as he admits that he doesn't get much time for cooking these days on account of his work. And yeah, his family used to run the old pewter gym. First his dad, then him, then his brother Forrest, after he went off to travel with Ash. Sometimes he wonders if Forrest would have gone off on his own journey someday, and then maybe Yolanda and Salvador would have taken over. But with everything that happened, they never got the chance. Knowing better than to pry, Silent simply gives his condolences, admitting that he doesn't know what he'd do if he had lost his brothers. That's why he's on his way back to Unova, as fast as he can. A sentiment that evidently seems to resonate with the Doctor, as while he remains silent, he does give a small understanding nod to the horizon.
As the sun begins moving behind the mountains, the Pokemon Center rises into view like a mirage, its windows boarded and its red roof dulled to the color of dried blood. Though neither factor comes anywhere close to its most striking feature. A wall of wood, sheet metal, and seemingly anything else Brock could forage, lined not with spikes or sentries, but a dozen or so milky-eyed infected Pokemon, each chained like a guard growler that now reaches out to Brock and Silent, half in recognition and half in hunger. At the sight of them, Silent clutches Pansage tighter, relieved that it is still holding on, even as the dark veins spread. While seeing this, Brock sighs that they were the ones he could not save. Hope blossoming like sweet fruit after so much bitterness, Silent eagerly asks if he has found a cure then, to which Brock admits that he's been working on one, and while it's imperfect, it has been able to at least keep the disease in remission if the treatment is administered quickly and frequently enough. Smiling down at his partner, Silent asks if it hears that, it's gonna be okay. While turning to face the gate, Brock calls out that he's home, and that he's brought a guest. At once, part of the gate is pulled away, allowing Steelix to slither through. Then, once the barricade is resecured and the two trainers have dismounted, Brock leads his green-haired companion inside.
These things strike Silent as he crosses the threshold. First, how cold this place is, as the strength and intensity of the air conditioner suddenly makes him wish that his vest wore a jacket. And second, the powerful piercing taste of chemicals in the air, mostly antiseptics and disinfectants, though he supposes the latter point should be expected from a hospital, even if the scent is more potent than anywhere he has ever been. While the fact that this place has power for air conditioning means Brock must have a well-maintained fleet of generators, which is impressive in and of itself. However, it seems the two of them are not alone, as waiting behind the counter are a trio of Nurse Joys, each showing signs of the strain of the horrible months that have preceded them, though somehow staying chipper in spite of it, as only one Joy expectantly welcomes Brock home, calling him Doctor, while another asks what should be done with their guest and his Pokemon. In a testament of how times have changed, Brock barely even looks at the trio, ignoring the greeting and simply stating that they know what to do with Pansage. Nodding attentively, one of the Joys flits forward, her hands outstretched, and though Silent feels some faint reluctance to hand over his partner, even a Nurse Joy. When Brock gives him a reassuring nod and states that she will take care of it, he relents, telling Pansage to be strong before watching as it is taken down a passageway and out of sight. Now that is dealt with, Brock returns his gaze to the other Joys, a hint of tension to his voice, as he asks them if anything has changed since he left. As one of the two women reply that it hasn't, with this coming as an immense relief to the young man, as he tells Silent that he's afraid that he must return to his work, though one of his nurses will show him to a room if he'd like to rest. Not feeling as though he could rest while he's so worried about Pansage, Silent offers to make some dinner instead. After all, it's the least he can do for his rescuer and a friend of Ash's.
For a second, something like hesitancy seems to cross Brock's face, though it is only a fleeting shadow, as a second later he is back to normal, noting that he'd appreciate that, though he does have one request, that Silent not go wandering off on his own, since they're doing important medical research here, with samples and machinery that can't be easily replaced if they're damaged or contaminated. So if he needs to go somewhere or get something, call one of the Joys, and they'll be happy to help. Seeing the logic in this, Silent obeys, allowing himself to be led to the kitchen while Brock heads down a different corridor, with the sight of a functioning grill, oven and refrigerator going a long way to put the connoisseur at ease. After everything that has happened, this is familiar and comforting, and while it is a touch more Spartan than the Striaton kitchen, having been designed to produce quantities of food over strict quality, it is enough to make Silent feel at home. Settling on a nice hearty stew that they can all enjoy, Silent begins gathering up ingredients, while helpfully his Joy Guide slips into the meat freezer and returns with a hunk of meat that she lays on the counter before departing the kitchen, her expression having never changed since he first arrived. Unbothered by this as he is already sinking back into the familiar headspace of a cook, Silent unwraps the cut of meat, oinkalogne or maybe tepig from the look of it, though oddly pale and completely bloodless. But he supposes it is a fairly common practice to exsanguinate pork. Dicing it up and sliding it into the pan to brown, Silent is struck by the smell, coarser than usual, but also thinner, so that a harsh metallic undertone shines through more clearly. An abundance of stress hormones more than likely, which is less than ideal for cooking, but he supposes any Pokemon would be stressed in this new world they've found themselves in.
Then suddenly, a new scent cuts through all the rest, melting plastic. And looking down, Silent is shocked to see half a tag poking out of one of the meat cubes, now that he has begun to tense and shriek in the heat of the pan. Pulling out the piece so that it does not further contaminate the food, the green-haired youth is surprised to see that it appears to be a name tag, and doing his best to make out anything through the melted plastic, he sees the words Landon, Emil, and the number 44 printed on the top corner. Something about this causes the hairs on the back of Silent's neck to stand up, while his eyes drift automatically to the meat freezer that Joy had retrieved this from. Since he got melted plastic in the food, he'll need to retrieve another cut of meat to start again. And while Brock had said to call in the nurses, there literally is no need to drag one of them back from the front desk to do this, not when he can get it himself. Taking a deep breath, Silent marches over and swings the door open, with the cold that meets him feeling almost crushing, like frozen ghosts trampling over him to escape. With them comes more of that same smell as the meat, though now he knows why it smells so strange, as amidst the shelves of carefully packaged meat lie hospital gurneys, each carrying a pale, bloodless human corpse.
Feeling vomit on the back of his tongue, Silent bursts from the room, his instincts driving him down the same corridor as Brock before his rationale can catch up. Even now, part of him wants to give the man who has been his savior, host, and a mutual friend the benefit of the doubt and a chance to explain why this is not what it seems. Though, a louder part of him doesn't care. He just needs to find Pansage and get out of here before whatever fate befell those people befalls them. Distantly, Silent hears the whir of machinery, and figuring that might be where they have his partner, the green-haired youth doesn't hesitate to barge in. Manners be damned. However, what he sees is not at all what he had expected. An operating theatre converted into a child's bedroom, and a well-loved one at that, as the sheets are clean. The smell of fresh-cut flowers fill the space, and the only dust to be found is on an old photo frame of Brock and a group of children who can only be his siblings. And at the center of it all is a boy, younger than the doctor, but unmistakably one of his brothers from the photo, the eldest of them. Forrest, he believes Brock called him. Though, this boy is markedly different from the smiling child in the photo, as now he is slumped in a reclining chair, his skin pale enough to almost blend in with the sheets, while dark necrotic veins poke out from beneath his collar. Even his breathing seems faded, an artificial movement of his lungs by one of the many machines he's hooked up to, or from the way his blanket falls. It is clear that he is missing both his legs and an arm. However, that does not seem to matter at all to Brock, who is bent over Forrest, lovingly brushing his hair while muttering reassuring words that Silent cannot hear over the thrumming of what he now realizes is a dialysis machine.
At the sound of his intrusion, Brock turns, his tone and expression calm as he sighs that Silent ignored his request, and went into the freezer, didn't he? That's disappointing. Struggling not to let bile fill his mouth, the Unnovan youth demands to know why Brock's doing all of this. From what Ash told him, he's a kind, level-headed person, so how could he stoop to such monstrous acts? In contrast, the doctor's expression does not change, as in the same wistful voice as when they were riding on Steelix, he simply states that Forrest is all that he has left, and he refuses to lose him too. Seeing that look of horror in Silent's eyes has not faded, Brock next asks if the green-haired cook would not do the same if their roles were reversed, and it was one of his brothers who was bit. Can he truly say he would let them turn if he had the power to prevent it? Face blanching, Silent protests that he isn't preventing it, he's just delaying the inevitable. With this at last being enough to stir Brock's animus, as he growls that the treatment is working. He just needs to keep flushing Forrest's blood, and eventually the disease will be gone. He just needs more time, and more donors.
For a second, neither move, nor speak, nor even breathe, with the only sound being the hum of the dialysis pump. Then as one, they spring into action, with Brock reaching for his Pokeballs while Silent steps back and runs. Suddenly, the corridor feels endless, with the green-haired boy needing to work hard just not to slip on the linoleum floor which now feels like ice to his shaking legs. Nonetheless, he pushes forward, scanning for any door that might contain Pansage, though, as it turns out, it's already waiting for him out in the hallway. As turning a corner, he comes face to face with the three smiling Joys, one of whom has the now zombified Pansage on a chain like those guarding the gate. Heartbreaking at this sight, Silent attempts to double back and flee, though it is already too late, as closing in from behind are a Krogunk and Chansey, both of whom share the same look of hollow-eyed obedience as the Joys. Then, when it is clear he is cornered, Brock himself approaches, his face calm and professional once more. Desperately, Silent meets his eyes, searching for the friend Ash once spoke of, the kind big brother who ensured everything would be alright. Though, The longer he looks, the more he realizes that person was never absent, just twisted, as those same desires are what drive him now. Recognizing he cannot reason with such a person, and without Pansage he cannot fight, Silence simply stands tall, unwilling to falter as he did before. Whether this stirs anything in Brock, the green-haired youth does not know, as when he speaks, it is just 4 words directed over his shoulder. Nurses, prep for surgery.
And that's where we're going to leave things this season. Though, with many more stories to be told in the zombie-ravaged Pokemon world, you can bet we'll be back next year.
Though it may be a while, as such a spooky story deserves to be told in the spookiest of months.
But until then, have a happy Halloween.
And remember, beware what goes bump in the night.